Jessica Edens was born on January 22, 1981, in a small suburb of New York State, USA. She came from a large family, with a sister named Diane and two half-brothers, Nathan and Adam. Jessica spent her early years surrounded by loving parents and siblings, with whom she developed warm relationships. She didn't have outstanding academic success but was always creative, dreaming of becoming a photographer. When her parents recognized this passion, they bought her an amateur camera, which she carried everywhere. She took pictures of people, nature, cities, and architecture, anything that caught her attention. Her work was admired and praised. During her teenage years, Jessica actively pursued this passion and mastered the craft. She began to shoot weddings and various events, initially for free, then for a small fee. This allowed her to earn enough money for her own needs, and the idea of building a real business became increasingly appealing. Jessica's personal life was also progressing. She was sociable, active, attractive, and always attracted a lot of attention. On November 19, 2007, she gave birth to a son named Hayden King. Jessica became pregnant during a rapidly developing relationship with a young man, but the love between them faded quickly, and they broke up before Hayden was born. However, Jessica remained optimistic and maintained friendly relations with the child's biological father, allowing him to communicate with Hayden. Jessica was determined to provide everything her child needed, regardless of whether she had a partner or was raising him as a single mother. Fortunately, she did not have to be alone for long. In 2008, Jessica met a man named Benjamin Edens. They quickly found common ground, grew closer, and within a few meetings, they could not imagine their lives without each other. They was in no hurry to officially register their marriage, as both were creative individuals who understood each other well. After a few months, they moved in together, and Jessica began to contemplate having more children. After a while, they officially got married in 2010. Shortly thereafter, they decided to move to a new large house located in a small, cozy town in Easley, South Carolina, which was ideal for a quiet family life. Their family relationships flourished, and Jessica was convinced she had found the man of her dreams, a feeling that was mutual. 2 years later, on July 19, 2012, they welcomed a daughter named Harper Edens. Jessica believes this further strengthens her relationship with Benjamin. He was a wonderful father who spent all his free time with Harper. He also became so close to Hayden that the boy did not suspect Benjamin was not his biological father. By 2017, Hayden was in the 4th grade, while his younger sister Harper was about to start 1st grade in the fall. This was an exciting milestone. From the outside, Jessica's family appeared perfect. She had 2 children, a beloved job, and a husband whom she described to everyone as the best person. Her eldest child was a good student, and the family expected the same from Harper. Jessica's passion for photography thrived, but when she had her daughter, she decided to take a break and become a housewife, stepping back from her small but successful photo business. However, as Harper grew more independent, Jessica returned to attending various events to conduct professional photography. To simplify her client search, she created a website where she introduced herself as a photographer from Greenville. Jessica described her life as perfect, but, as often happens, things were exaggerated. Behind the facade of love and understanding, difficulties began to arise in the marriage. Over time, Benjamin's feelings cooled, and tension accumulated between them. Jessica wanted to understand what was happening as she began to notice uncharacteristic behaviors in her husband. He would come home from work, immediately run into the shower without even saying hello to his wife and children, as if he were trying to hide something. More and more often, he stayed at work much longer than his shift lasted, citing overtime and global projects that no one could confirm. He began to actively engage in sports, carefully monitored his appearance, and switched to healthy eating. All this could look like ordinary healthy habits that people develop with age, but not with Jessica. She began to suspect Benjamin of cheating. Quickly, a suitable candidate for an affair appeared. A young, attractive woman had recently started at her husband's workplace. This woman's name was Meredith Rahme. She was born on October 29, 1988, in Collierville, Tennessee. In Jessica's opinion, it was on Meredith that her husband had set his eyes. In the early years of Meredith's life, her parents divorced, and her mother quickly found a new man and remarried, so Meredith had a stepfather named Carlton Chambers. He was a worthy person and became like a second father to her. The family in which she grew up was friendly and loving. Meredith had a younger sister named Brittany Rahme. She dedicated herself to her studies from an early age and was focused on career success. She studied well and was creative, like Jessica, but family and children were of little interest to her. In 2009, she graduated from the University of Memphis with a bachelor's degree in international business. After gaining some necessary experience, she moved to Greenville. Meredith was very independent and self-confident, which immediately caught Benjamin's eye. By the time they met, Meredith had started working at the same company as Benjamin. In fact, Jessica's suspicions were justified. Immediately after meeting Meredith, her husband became attracted to her. Their feelings come from both sides. They started dating in secret, and their affair continued for a year. Now, Benjamin finally realized that he wanted to be with his young mistress and wanted to break up with Jessica, but he didn't know how to approach the issue. He was afraid of offending his wife and wanted to avoid the difficulties of the divorce process. For a long time, Benjamin was torn between his family and his mistress. His wife's suspicions only aggravated the situation. The more accusations she made, the more inevitable the breakup felt, which provoked constant quarrels. Jessica did not trust her husband and wanted to find out what was going on. He tried to distance himself, but this could not go on forever. It was time to tell the truth, but Benjamin could not bring himself to do it. Instead of confessing, he decided to move out on far-fetched grounds, citing constant pressure from his wife. On April 11, 2017, Benjamin packed his things and moved from the shared family home to a rented apartment. At least that is what he initially told his wife. Jessica kept hoping that these were only temporary difficulties that many people experience, and that their marriage would be saved. She believed she could convince her husband to return to her and their children. Benjamin tried to avoid the topic of separation altogether, reluctantly answered calls and messages, which only offended her more. The betrayal was of such a magnitude that she could not forgive it. She was angry, and her hopes for a family reunion were shattered. But most of all, she was furious that Benjamin simply ignored her. As the persecution began, Jessica spread various damaging facts about Meredith on all social networks and on any sites where she could post information, exposing her as the homewrecker and her husband as a cheater. Jessica continued to communicate regularly with Benjamin, trying to win him back. Instead, he finally decided to file for divorce. Telling Jessica this provoked even more anger from her, and she now decided to annoy him as much as possible. She knew how much Benjamin loved their daughter Harper, so she sought sole custody of the girl. He had always been a caring father and loved the children, including Hayden. Therefore, he was against such a decision. Benjamin wanted to maintain the right to communicate with the children. He did not want to sit idly by. He hoped to smooth over the conflict and therefore proposed joint custody. Jessica was adamant. Against this backdrop, a serious custody battle began, and tensions escalated. Realizing that it would not be possible to agree amicably, Benjamin went to court on July 11th. He wanted to gain an advantage and testified under oath that Jessica was using the children as a weapon of revenge. By this point, Jessica had completely prevented meetings and communication between the children with their father, not even allowing contact through social networks and mobile phones. Everything was under her total control. Benjamin was afraid she could go too far. Simultaneously, Jessica intensified her harassment of Benjamin and Meredith. She continued to post not just hateful words toward Meredith on social media but also used graphic photos and other offensive captions. Previously, Jessica had tried to portray Benjamin's mistress as a family destroyer. Now, even more disturbing captions began to appear. She claimed that Meredith would get what she deserved, though she never specified what she meant. Meredith, the target of the harassment, began to fear that all of this could be dangerous. However, Benjamin insisted that Jessica had no history of violence, so he believed the situation would gradually settle down. He tried not to provoke her further, but it had little effect. The situation only worsened. When Jessica learned about the filing of a joint custody application by her husband, she was furious. Benjamin had always been a decent person, a valuable employee who earned a good salary and had no bad habits or addictions, so there were no serious grounds for denying him custody or terminating his contact with the children. He simply wanted to see them. Now that he had received the right to visit, which Jessica could not oppose. Due to the impossibility of taking revenge, she began to come up with more sophisticated ways to annoy him. Every short communication with Benjamin ended in conflicts and accusations. It was even more annoying to her that the mistress would be in contact with the children. During this period, Benjamin and Meredith regularly contacted the police to complain about Jessica's behavior. In particular, Meredith could no longer tolerate the publications that Jessica made about her daily on various social networks. She starts having problems at work when Jessica tries to turn things around her. Benjamin tried to prove that Jessica's behavior was stalking and very disturbing. Worse, he began receiving frightening messages from Jessica, all concerning the children. It seemed she was trying to intimidate him with ambiguous phrases, and he worried that his daughter might be in danger. In July 2017, after a court meeting, he called the police to check on the welfare of the children at Jessica's house. He described the situation in detail. He felt powerless since Jessica still interfered with the meetings, and he did not want to use force, fearing she would use this in court against him to strip him of his joint custody rights. The officers who responded reported that everything was fine, but the anxiety from the threats continued to grow. On July 12, they discussed joint custody again. All attempts by Jessica to prevent this were unsuccessful, making her even more furious. During the day, Benjamin begins to receive more disturbing messages from his ex-wife. It was obvious to her that there was no legal way to limit the children's communication with their father, so she tried to irritate him further with her frightening messages. Benjamin contacted the police again and asked the patrol officers to go to the family home to check on the children's well-being. When the officers arrived, they again did not see anything suspicious. The report compiled by the patrolman stated that everything was fine, the family seemed normal, Jessica behaved calmly, and her son and daughter were in a good mood while watching a movie when the officers arrived. At that moment, Jessica insisted that Harper call Benjamin, realizing that he had called the police. All of this became part of her insidious plan to expose him as a liar. While the officer was in the house, he discussed the potential resumption of relations with Benjamin. Jessica denied wanting to reconcile, calling him a traitor who had cheated for a whole year. She couldn't forgive him and intended to use this in court to achieve sole custody of their daughter. She didn't want him in the children's lives. While the officer was filling out the report, Jessica began insisting that Benjamin and Meredith were very dangerous people, especially to the children. She claimed to have suffered from their behavior since the divorce process began and insisted that they were trying to portray her in a bad light. Jessica wanted to obtain a restraining order against them. The patrolman informed Jessica that, in order to get a restraining order, she would have to go through the court process after filing a report. After saying goodbye to the officers, she promised to file a statement in person soon, but that was not destined to happen. The next day, while Jessica's family was out of town, she went to her parents' house early in the morning and took a .40 caliber pistol that they used for self-defense. When relatives heard about this, Jessica warned her father about the need for a weapon, and he was not against it. They did not suspect the scale of the persecution that Jessica had arranged. She skillfully lied, making Benjamin look worse and referring to the persecution from him, that the danger emanating from her ex. Jessica claimed that she could not feel calm at home, she was simply afraid to be left alone with her 2 children. They were easily convinced that Benjamin and Meredith posed a threat, including to the children, and that the weapon would help protect them from what she described as extremely harmful communication. All of this sounded plausible, therefore, her parents had no problem with her needing the weapon for a while. Jessica planned to keep the gun in the house while the divorce process was ongoing. Jessica then sent text messages filled with accusations, now targeting everyone who knew Meredith. She managed to find information about the family and friends of Meredith, copying the messages to everyone, then telling them how Meredith had stolen her husband, destroyed her family, and was now trying to take the children. Jessica obtained the phone numbers of at least 5 friends of family members on social media. It seemed she was immersed in this all day, displaying behavior that resembled madness. She even personally called several people, relaying her story over her mobile phone. Some of Jessica's acquaintances became disappointed in her decency, causing real damage to her reputation. Benjamin also received even more terrifying messages. Jessica openly accused and intimidated him, stating that he would not receive anything, he would not gain access to Meredith and the children. Jessica wrote that because of his actions, he would have no chance of getting any of it, as she would not allow him to enjoy life after what he had done. Benjamin was extremely worried about this information and began to send Jessica message after message, trying to understand what she meant. However, she simply ignored all his questions, which only increased Benjamin's anxiety. He expressed his willingness to go to court for an emergency hearing regarding joint custody of the children, even threatened to try to take the children from her if she did not calm down. Finally, Jessica responded with a short message, "Your life will soon be better." Benjamin was sure that she was just mocking him and enjoying this situation. Jessica claimed that it was the last day she would experience pain, after which she ignored any attempts by Benjamin to contact her. On the morning of July 13, 2017, Jessica wrote to Benjamin again. She offered to meet so that Benjamin could answer some questions. However, Benjamin found everything very suspicious and hesitated to attend the meeting. He didn't suspect that this could turn out to be a fatal mistake. Benjamin tried to get her to talk on the phone to understand what she needed and why they couldn't discuss it without a meeting, but this only made Jessica even angrier. At 4:41 p.m., he received another message in which Jessica complained that she was tired of this bullying that never meant anything to Benjamin. In reality, old accusations and the most frightening threats she had ever voiced since the breakup emerged. Jessica's behavior was so alarming that Benjamin contacted her mother to discuss the situation, suspecting that Jessica was having a breakdown. He feared she could not control herself, might pose a danger to herself and the children. At that time, he was at work and could not leave. He did not suspect that while he was talking to Jessica's mother, Jessica was already driving to his apartment with bad intentions. At about 5 p.m., Jessica parked her car near the complex where Benjamin and Meredith lived. In the parking lot, Jessica saw Meredith, who had just returned from work and was sitting in her car, distracted by the mail on her mobile phone. Jessica approached her, pointed a gun, and shot through the glass, instantly killing her rival, whom she considered the cause of all her troubles. All this happened in broad daylight. As people were returning from work, the noise attracted numerous witnesses. After the incident, people saw Jessica get into her car and drive away. Neighbors contacted the police, reporting this and clarifying one frightening detail. At that time, there were 2 children in the car with the shooter. Witnesses described the shooter, and the police understood who they were talking about. They assumed that Benjamin was in danger. Jessica had enough time to act, but she was not going to go to Benjamin's workplace. Instead, she devised something much more sophisticated and stayed one step ahead of law enforcement. While the authorities were still looking for her in the city and were awaiting Benjamin's arrival at work, Jessica called Benjamin, told him that everyone he loved had left and that she would be next. Then Jessica hung up. It was the last call she made. Police eventually traced the call and went to Easley, 7 miles from the Benjamin home, where they saw her Jeep. The doors of the car were locked from the inside, and the engine was still running. Inside, they found 3 bodies, 2 children and Jessica herself, who was 36 years old. Jessica had persistently called Benjamin in hopes of meeting with him, perhaps intending him to be her first victim. However, he seemed to sense danger and avoided contact as much as possible, often opting to respond via a message on a messaging app. When she received a refusal, she flared up in anger and attacked Meredith, after which Jessica returned home. Near her house, she called Benjamin again. After a meaningless conversation, Jessica first attacked her 5-year-old daughter, then her 9-year-old son, after which she turned the gun on herself. Jessica used the same gun that she had borrowed from her parents on July 11th. During the investigation, detectives found out that Benjamin had been trying to obtain a restraining order against Jessica. He had filed for joint custody on the same day and had communicated with the police officer who came to check on the children. Jessica left 4 suicide notes, one for her mother, one for her father, one for her son's father, and one for her husband. In these notes, she expressed her love for her family and her regret for the pain her actions would cause them. Jessica insisted that she could no longer live with these feelings and believed that her children would also suffer without her, so she decided to take not only her life but theirs as well. In the letter to her son's father, she expressed gratitude for giving her her first child and apologized for the pain she had caused. Considering the content of these notes, the police investigated suspicions of domestic violence against the children. Judging by what Jessica wrote, it was possible she had harmed them as a way of exacting revenge on her unfaithful husband. However, nothing like this could be confirmed. As for the last note left by Jessica to Benjamin, it contained several short phrases in which she wished that Benjamin would experience the pain from his cruel act for the rest of his life. The note also stated that he would not be able to hurt them anymore. Among all the individuals involved in this case, Benjamin was the only survivor. The note turned out to be prophetic. Even to this day, he continues to live with the pain of losing his loved ones.